Imagine this. It's 2 a.m. The storm outside is raging and the power's out. You're alone in your house and the only sound is the static from an old radio. Suddenly, a voice breaks through. A voice that shouldn't be there. It's warning you. It's telling you to lock your doors, to stay hidden because they're coming. But here's the thing. The voice on the radio? It's not human. And neither is the thing knocking on your door. This is the story of the last broadcast. And trust me, by the end you'll never look at an old radio the same way again. Do you remember the days when radios were the only way to hear the world outside? The crackle of static, the faint voices drifting through the airwaves. But what if one night you tuned into a station that wasn't meant for you? This is the story of the last broadcast. It was a cold, rainy night in the small town of Black Hollow. Sarah, a college student home for the holidays, was alone in her family's old farmhouse. Her parents were out of town, and the storm had knocked out the power. With nothing else to do, she decided to explore the attic where her grandfather's vintage radio had been collecting dust for decades. Sarah had always been curious about the radio. Her grandfather used to tell stories about how he'd listened to it during the war, catching news from faraway places. But there was one story he never finished. A story about a strange broadcast he once heard, late at night, on a frequency that didn't exist. She cleaned off the radio, plugged it in, and to her surprise, it crackled to life. The dial was stuck on a frequency she didn't recognize, 98.7 FM. At first, there was only static. But then, a voice broke through. Hello? Is anyone out there? This is emergency broadcast station 98.7. If you can hear this, you're in danger. They're coming. Sarah froze. The voice sounded desperate, almost pleading. She leaned closer to the radio, her heart pounding. The voice continued. They're not human. They look like us, but they're not. They're here, in Black Hollow. If you hear this, lock your doors. Don't let them in. Don't trust anyone. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She could have sworn she heard a faint knock on the front door. She crept to the window and peered outside. The rain was pouring now, but she could just make out a figure standing at the edge of the driveway. It was too dark to see their face, but they were staring right at the house. Sarah's mind raced. Who was on the radio? Who was outside? She grabbed her phone, but there was no signal. The knocking grew louder, more aggressive. She ran to the door and pressed her ear against it. Voice outside, muffled, familiar. Sarah? It's me, your mom. Let me in. The storm. It's too dangerous out here. Relief washed over her. It was just her mom. She reached for the lock, but then she remembered the warning. Don't trust anyone. She hesitated. Voice on the radio. Suddenly clear, urgent. Sarah. Don't open the door. That's not your mom. Look outside again. Sarah's hands trembled as she crept back to the window. The figure was still there, but now she could see its face. It was her mom. But something was wrong. Her eyes were pitch black, and her smile stretched too wide, too unnatural. Voice outside, distorted, angry. Sarah, let me in. Now. Sarah backed away from the door, her heart pounding. She grabbed the radio and whispered, "What do I do?" Voice on the radio. "Turn off the lights. Stay quiet. They can't see you in the dark." She flipped the light switch and crouched in the corner, clutching the radio. The pounding stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then, she heard it. A faint scratching at the window. She turned her head slowly, and there it was. The thing wearing her mom's face pressed against the glass, staring right at her. Voice on the radio. Good luck, Sarah. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. The next morning, the storm had passed. The power was back on, and the radio was silent. Sarah was gone. The only clue was the broken window and the faint sound of static coming from the attic. If you ever find yourself in Black Hollow and you hear a voice on the radio, don't answer. They're always listening. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos.